Good evening. Today I'm hosting Viola von Cramon, a member of the European Parliament's Committee on Foreign Affairs. Welcome to Armenia, Ms. Cramon. Thanks for accepting the interview request. So you've visited Armenia in rather a hard time, hard period for our country. What's the aim of your visit?
First of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's always a big pleasure to be a guest in Armenia. And indeed, I've chosen exactly this time because I think it is important to show solidarity, but also to understand from the facts on the ground, from the meetings here in Yerevan and in Goris today, what would be the appropriate answer, how to support Armenia in these difficult times the most. I think nothing can substitute the personal visit on the ground, the personal meetings. And of course, as you might have seen, we had a resolution the last plenary session in Strasbourg with an overall majority. More than 90% were in favor of supporting Armenia, sanctioning Azerbaijan, making sure that Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity will be guaranteed, will be secured. And to put even more pressure on that and to put pressure especially also on the EU institution, I decided to come to inform myself here on the ground.
And you've held a number of meetings in different state institutions in Armenia. You have also visited Syunik. Can you please sum up the discussions as well as your impressions?
Absolutely. I've met with many different people, with international representatives, with civil society, some more critical, some more, let's say, satisfied with also what the Armenian government is doing. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, our colleagues in the parliament here, and many different other people, and also today in Goris. And one thing is clear, Armenia is very resilient. Armenia knows what the country wants. They have a clear, I would say, perspective for reforming it even more, to go along this democratic path, to decide that they would like to live in a secure and in a better condition in the near future. And of course, they would like to see more help. I mean, all of them are extremely grateful for the help they have received and the assistance they have received from the European Union and the West, so to say. But of course, to really resist in this very difficult neighborhood, this geopolitical setting, I think the EU has to do even more.
On October 5th, as you mentioned, the European Union adopted a resolution on the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh after Azerbaijan's attack and continuing threats against Armenia, in which the pre-planned military attack by Azerbaijan against the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh was strongly condemned. What does the adoption of this resolution entail in practice?
Well, this needs to be put into actions now, absolutely. There's no binding, no immediate binding function or role of this resolution, but of course the EU institution need to act. And I'm pretty sure also it shows that our foreign minister, the German foreign minister, will come next week. A lot of other internationals have been there, will come, that there's a lot of attention. There's a lot of, let's say, alertness, alarm on the Western side, on the EU side. And now we have to make sure that if Armenia's integrity, sovereignty will be again under attack, we need to increase the price for that. Whoever thinks that this might be an option needs to put this into his or her calculation. And for this, for me, it is crystal clear. If Azerbaijan thinks about another threatening, attacking use of military force, there should be immediate sanctions against Aliyev and his family immediately. We should really try to stop the gas from Azerbaijan imported to the European Union. And also, I think, at the moment now, Aliyev is very keen to have further cooperation with the EU, and we should also think about this deepening of trade relations with a country which obviously cannot stop to attack its neighbor.
And as you mentioned in your speech in the European Parliament, violence or neglect of violence promotes more violence. For about 10 months, Azerbaijan kept the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians under siege, exhausting them physically and mentally. And then in September, Azerbaijan organized a large-scale military attack on the Armenians, which led to the ethnic cleansing of the Nagorno-Karabakh ethnic Armenians. After all this, we again witnessed only appeals and statements. In this case, when we think that the authoritarian leader of Azerbaijan, who actually deprived more than 100,000 people from their homeland, did not face any practical consequences. In your opinion, is such an activity by international actors normal in the 21st century? And in case even if the decisions of international courts are powerless to stop Azerbaijan, what can eventually stop Aliyev from this, let's say, aggression, this time against Armenia?
That's right. In the past, it had not worked because I think that people underestimated the aggressiveness of Azerbaijan and also the preparedness. We have been to Goris today. We have been on a patrol. We see how much the whole attack was going hand in hand with infrastructure measures on the new border, making sure that they are not just only new streets immediately being built, but also obviously new lines for pipelines, other infrastructure, buildings taking place at the same moment. And I think it is especially regretful. Well, last summer, for example, we were here with the AFET committee, the Committee for Foreign Affairs, and we saw how much political will was on the Armenian side to come to a compromise, to come to peace, sustainable peace. How much Armenia has fulfilled all of their obligations from the November 2020 agreement and so on. So in that respect, I think it is crystal clear that now it is up to us, as I said before, to increase the price and maybe also, as you have mentioned, to use the international court system to appeal to the International Criminal Court. But this is not up to me to make a decision on this, but this should be all on the table. And that is important so that Aliyev knows the risk he is running into if he considers any kind of a military attack. And I think in the European Union, there's an overall majority for supporting Armenia. And let me add, of course, we sent a lot of humanitarian aid. In Goris, you can see how much humanitarian aid has been reached and has been received by the people. Of course, there is the mission, the civil mission. We will probably enlarge the mission, or maybe reconsider and review the capabilities of the mission. So the EU is present much more in the past. You have seen that Charles Michel and Ursula von der Leyen are very active in the negotiation process. They want to be the honest brokers. They really want to come to any kind of a final solution so that people here can live in peace and quiet. But you're absolutely right. In the end, we also need robust assistance. We need anything like security guarantees. And so far, the EU has not or could not really deliver on that. But it's absolutely right that Armenia is asking for this.
And you're one of those European politicians who don't shy away from calling a spade. In regard to your address statements on Azerbaijan's illegal actions, have you been involved in any counteraction from the Azerbaijani side?
I have been in the past, to be honest. I was a member of the German Bundestag, and even at that time, I was heavily attacked. There were smear campaigns, there were all kinds of lies against me. Not so much this time, maybe because there are so many other friends of Armenia speaking up and supporting Armenia, so I'm not so much singled out as it was in the past. And also Azerbaijan, I think, has changed their methods and their patterns a bit. I think they're a bit more, let's call it civilized, but they use other methods to put pressure. So they put a lot of pressure on diplomats, on EU institutions in Baku, on other people who need to cooperate with Azerbaijan. There's a lot of political, diplomatic and other pressure. And I guess they have a lot of compromise against individuals, and they will use that. They have not so much against me, and so far I had not faced anything threatening against me.
And Azerbaijan boycotted the planned five-party meeting in Granada. Baku offers to discuss the issues either in Georgia or in Moscow bilaterally or in 3+3 format. In your opinion, where do these attempts of Azerbaijan to change the negotiating table lead, and how do you evaluate the quadrilateral statement adopted in Granada?
I think the statement adopted in Granada by Pashinyan and Ursula von der Leyen were very strong, very clear, and not to be understood, to be misunderstood. But, of course, we need to make sure we get both parties at the negotiation table, be it in Washington, Brussels, Granada, or any other city, but to make sure that the EU, which is the honest broker, also gives Azerbaijan, if they fulfill their commitments, the opportunity to participate. And for this, I think many people in Brussels work extremely hard to create this environment, to make sure that both parties feel obliged, feel safe, and will gain from a mutual agreement, let's put it this way. I don't know at which stage they are at the moment. I think there are a lot of talks going on for a bilateral meeting or trilateral meeting soon, be it in Washington or in Brussels. But what is the last, let's say, information on this, I can't tell you, but I know there's a huge interest, especially in the EU, to host both of the head of states.
And you mentioned about the statement which was made in Grenada between Pashinyan and von der Leyen. As for you, what effect will it have on Armenia-EU relations?
Well, I was really impressed by the commitment of this government to come closer to the EU, to go for reforms, to go for anti-corruption reform, to get rid of this old oligarchy system, to make sure that civil society is more included than in the past, and many other, let's say, steps towards a more resilient and a more democratic society. This is what is needed if you are interested to become a serious European partner. And I think Armenia is on a very good path, and I would like to see that Armenia is being awarded for this, be it with deepening the trade relation, more humanitarian aid, technical aid, and so on and so forth. So there can be a lot of opportunities, but especially now when we see that more than 100,000 entered Armenia, there's a lot to do. I think we need to look what kind of opportunities we can give to those people, and I think the EU is more than happy to support Armenia with this, to integrate them in the labor market, educational system, to do a long life learning for those who need different skills now than they had maybe in Nagorno-Karabakh and many other subjects. So I think the EU is ready to support Armenia in all of those sectors.
And coming back to the question concerning Azerbaijan sanctioning, how high is the possibility that the European Union someday will somehow sanction Azerbaijan for the actions, for all the, let's say, war crimes which we witnessed not only this year but also in 2016 war, also in 2020 war, and after that?
Well, it's really hard for me to assess that at the moment, but above all speculation, I mean, if we imagine there would be another attack, I think that many member states would be ready to go for tough sanctions. as we have done so when Russia started its full-fledged invasion towards Ukraine. As I said, I don't hope it will ever happen, but I think we should open and publicly speak about that so that anyone is aware of the danger they're running into. Yes, and also what you have asked, war crimes and other things which happened in 2016 and afterwards. I think it needs to be, how to say, a good documentary, good monitoring, and then if there is enough proof, it needs to be brought to court, that's for sure. But this is maybe more up to legal specialists, legal advisors, international lawyers to really make a final assessment on those questions. There I'm maybe not the right person to ask.
And Ms. Cramon, what message do you take with you from Armenia?
Well, actually, I feel very inspired on what I've seen, even from refugees who are in a very dire situation, who live in temporary shelters. They still don't complain. They still have a positive attitude, and this is what amazed me and impressed me the most. The spirit of the people, the commitment of the people, what you have achieved and what you have done for your own people, for your own country. I think that is a role model for many societies in the European Union, and I guess that many countries could be proud of what you have done during the last weeks and months. So that was a very positive, I would say, 3 days trip to Armenia, and I feel very inspired by this.
Thanks for the interview, Ms. Cramon. Today I was talking to Viola von Cramon, a member of the European Parliament's Committee on Foreign Affairs. Thanks for watching us.